Hello everyone, my name is El Parnaso, and as you can see, I was already playing with just one Capsi Yami. Not only that, I really believe that Yami need to get hit a lot more, so I assumed that Marshmallow was going to get hit at 1, and that Reproducus was just going to be a straight up ban. Therefore, I wasn't testing with Fiensmith in this one. Regardless of that, I was still kicking some Kewl asses, because of how the deck was built, and that is what I wanted to share with you. Some tips of whatever version of Yami you're playing can go against Kewl and go in a very decent way. So the first thing that we need to understand is what we actually care about when it comes to Kewl interruptions. Because you're not going to tell me, right, that what you worry about is like Meats popping one monster or Rico popping Mignon whenever you try to play, right? That is not an actual issue. What you actually care about is cards like Kewl Arrest, the Clip, the Crackle, and the B2B. Those are the cards that actually mess with how you are trying to play the game when it comes to Yami variants, right? So let's talk about it. The first thing that we need to understand is Kewl Arrest. As long as they have access to Kewl Reco, they can make Kewl Arrest. Therefore, they have approximately between 17 and approximately 16, 17 ways that the deck can go to Reco. Ignore the desires, maybe these are Duelist Genesis. I was just trying to test some shit. But the point is that they will have like between 18 and 17, as you can see. So when you are a Yami deck, if they have 18 different ways to get with or to possibly get to the Kewl Arrest, you need to have more than 18 ways to stop them to either play their Yami combos or get to the Kewl Arrest. Therefore, I think that these 20 non-engine are kind of the best options that we have, because all of them can exchange with your opponent trying to play the game, and at the same time will avoid at least the first chance that they have to add or access to the Rico, or they will be hand traps or non-engine that can deal and exchange themselves with the Kewl Arrest. Obviously, the impermanence can be used at any phase, like in your draw phase or standby phase, if your opponent ended up with Kewl Arrest on their field after you interrupt them with any other shit. And if they didn't, you're in a neither better position, because that means that the RS is not there because you effectually avoid the Rico. But then if that happens, the impermanence as a top deck or as a hand trap that you save in your hand after you use any of the others can still deal with that Rico, because the Rico can negate it in any phase that is not the main phase. Now, with the Dominus Spark, if because of how the Kewl deck works, if they are making Synchro Summon in their turn or Synchro Summon in your turn, that is almost always going to imply a monster effect in the hand or in the graveyard. If they use Clip to Synchro in your turn, that's an effect in the hand already. If they play with the extra normal or Rotary, that's an effect from the hand already in their turn. If they make the effects to get advantage, like Q to see your deck, Rico to pop, Meats to pop, or Rotary to search and look at your hand, those are all effects from the graveyard too, as well as the Kewl Clip to banish from your extra deck. Therefore, almost always when that Kewl RS is going to hit the field, your Dominus Spark is going to be able to be activated from the hand. What does that mean? That if for some weird reason they left a Kewl RS in their turn, you can just wait to the end phase of that turn and use the Dominus Spark to banish that Kewl RS. Oh, they're going to special something from the hand. Who gives a fuck? Like at that point they were already playing, right? So you rather make them a special summon something in their hand than leaving that RS on the field. Also, a lot of people, for some weird reason, are playing just one RS, which makes the Dominus Spark an even bigger punishment whenever you are available to do that in their turn. And if they summon the Kewl RS in your turn, as I show you, that almost always will be implying an effect from the hand or an effect from the graveyard. The only case will be that they use Kewl Synchro, they add and they don't use any of the advantage graveyard effects from the Kewl, and they just leave the RS. But if they do, they expose themselves to cards like Droplet that you are playing too. Also, they are exposing themselves to Ash Blossom to the KTS. So you can see how constantly your hand traps are interacting with each other in such a way that they can go against not only one of these cards, but combination of them, and different scenarios when you can take advantage of your hand traps either going first or second, because of uses of the Ash on the KTS in your turn, if you draw it as a 6 card after you interrupting with the other shit, if you interrupt them and they leave just the Kilton remits, the Gospel just leave an empty board. You can see how these hand traps works together. So I think it's very important to for this reason to maybe just keep using the Ghost Ogres or any other hand trap that can fulfill that purpose of you drawing it as a 6 card and still doing something. However, I can understand if people would rather play Droll instead of the Ghost Ogre, because Ghost Ogre popping the RS in your turn is kind of fake too, just as Droll being a 6 usable card will be kind of fake too, right? So I can see the argument to play Droll here. However, these other 6 I think are beautiful and very useful against that Kilton deck. The Fuwa, especially when it comes that all your other hand traps are usable also in your own turn. So even if they leave kind of an ass board just to give you one draw, if that draw is the Ash, the Ghost Bell, or even this the Imper, the Spark, or the Droplet, you're still dealing very well with whatever they leave you. So first thing that you need to do is to make that respectable approach. One of the most valuable thing of Qtun is that they always can do their shit. But if you have more ways to stop their shit, mathematically at least, than they have ways to play their shit, you are going to have advantage in a lot of duels. Now, another thing that I believe is really important when it comes with the Qtun RS is that you need to play Typhoon in this deck, because the Kilton RS most of the time is going to have more than 3000. Therefore, after you are pushing the board and after you are making the exchanges, the Typhoon just by itself will hit the Salen, because Typhoon has 100 more attack, so you can just go and hit it, and then you can bounce the Kilton RS, because the Kilton RS can use its effect, because the Kilton RS most likely will have more than 3000 attack because of all the tuners that they are playing, right? Therefore, they can negate the Sky Crisis. Therefore, the Sky Crisis is also dealing with the Kilton RS, which is very helpful, because this means that even if you use all your non-engine to avoid everything but the Kilton RS, just 2 Yami names will deal with the Kilton RS, because the Kilton RS can avoid you making the Snatchy, can avoid you putting the Minion, can avoid reviving the Yami. So 1 Yami will get you to the Snatchy and the Yami. And then you can special summon the Yami that you have in your hand and use any of the Yami level 1s, because again, Yu-Gi-Oh! 2002 knowledge, the stats are important. All of the Yamis level 1, except the Capsi, has the same attack or higher attack than the Snatchy. What does this mean? It means that whenever you are in a situation when you have a Snatchy and 2 level 1 Yamis on the board, you can use actually a level 1 Yami on the board instead of the Snatchy to make the Sky Crisis, because one of those Yami will have either more attack than the Snatchy, like Cookie or Marshmallow, or will have the same attack than the Snatchy, just like Lollipop, which means that if your opponent don't use the negate effect in either the Snatchy or the Minion, just by you having 2 Yami names can get rid of that Kilton RS, because you make the Sky's Crisis, now they can't even use the effect to negate anymore because it has more than 3000. You will bounce the Kilton RS with them not able to do anything about it, and then in your opponent's turn, you will still have all of your Yami circulation, because you still have the Yami Snatchy on the board and a level 1 monster. So you can see how the Typhoon allows a lot of shit that can actually make you win duels, because even if you push all of their plays and you put a Typhoon right there, you can just, as I told you, get rid of the Salen and the Kilton RS, and then they have to play the game all over again. So I think that Typhoon is really necessary when it comes to jamming post Blazing Dominion, especially after this ban list. And well, that is just a few tips that I wanted to give you here right now when it comes to having so much fear against the Kilton Arrest, which is a card that they actually, in actual duels, are not summoning that much, especially in a hand trap format when you can actually stop them from getting access to the Kilton Reco, as I show you with the hand traps that you are deciding to play, especially when you're playing hand traps that can get rid of the Kilton Arrest regardless. That is a very fair amount. So having the plus of just 2 yummies, making your circulation and getting rid of the Kilton Arrest, it's something that I think is very valuable to taking care of, which makes the Skies Crisis necessary, at least in yummy variants. So that is for, at least at the moment, for the Kilton Arrest and how you can interact with it, because of how the Kilton deck kind of works, right? So let's go for another thing that actually worries you whenever you play jamming, which is the Kilton Clip and the Kilton Crackle. So first, people are going to play one Kilton Clip because that is the way to go. That is the consistency approach. So this helps jamming in the sense that not a lot of the time you are going to deal with Kilton Clip turn 0. But even if that happens, you need to put yourself in positions when you respect that card, which is why you are trying to maximize, for example, in all the good link ones that you can play. You are trying, because at the end of the day, the Kilton Clip is still a random banish, and as long as you have ways to play, and as long as you have jammy names available, you can still kind of do the same shit. Even if they banish your Yami Snatchy, you still can make you with 2 Yami names or just with Capsi Yami, you can get with your Yami Synchro Circulations, and at some point even send your field spell to the graveyard, so you can return the Snatchy and then actually use it. So getting the Snatchy ban, it doesn't matter really at the end of the day. It's just like any other disruption. You have an extra way to play, and you can keep playing, and who gives a shit. So you need, in order to respect that, have different ways to have link 1 qualities. For example, the Kagari is kind of the same of Snatchy in the sense that it's a link 1 that if you generate it, can by itself generate another level 1 monster. So therefore you can still play, therefore you can still win the game. So having as long as good quality link 1s is very important, and therefore also because of the lack of Yami names with Capsi Yami at 3, the Sky Striker package in Yami is going to be more important than ever. So I think that I wouldn't say it's a skill issue, but I will really heavily advise you to not get that traumatized just because you are getting 1 card randomly banished, or even 1 selectively banished, because let's say that they banish your, like, randomly they banish your Snatchy and the Crackle banish your Capsi Yami way. If you still have two Yami names on your hand, you are still leaving like 5 interruptions, and you are banishing the Synchro with the SP. So you are getting rid of that Synchro too. Now, this is what I know, that yes, you may still not have the Synchro interaction in your opponent's turn, you can set their shit, but if you drew 2 cookies, you still have a pop and you still have a banish from the SP. So they use 2 cards, so you can left 2 interruptions and you still have your other hand traps. You can still win the game because popping a monster and banishing a monster is still good quality interactions against the Kilton cards. So you can see how the actual problem is not drawing your Yami monsters, more than you having to deal with whatever they do to your extra deck. Which means that having Yami names in your hand will become more valuable than before, which makes you think that, maybe maximize the cookie and the lollipops, even though the marshmallow will be a 3 in your possible builds, right? So this is so the Kilton Clip and the Crackle are going to be dealable also in the sense that if they play 1 clip, they basically needs to search it and generate it. The same with the Crackle. And therefore you are still playing hand traps that will avoid that approach. or will punish that approach. If they do all that shit under Fuwa, they'll give you 2 draws, and those 2 draws can be Yami names, and as long as you have Yami names and any Link 1 in your extra deck, you can still play the game. So it kind of doesn't matter at that point, and they are just wasting cards in interruptions that basically told you, hey, have 2 Yami names in your hand, which, you know, is not that tough to deal with when you compare with other interruptions that Yami has actually to deal with historically, right? So as long as you respect it, I think that you can actually just play the game. That is why I think, regardless of the version that you will play, cards like Linkuribo, Almirage, and, well, obviously the Kagari, right? But more Linkuribo and Almirage are very important because if you generate it once, they can be generated a lot of times again from the graveyard. So they are constantly good link ones, right? So you can make the argument that you can lose the cards that are not for you strictly Yami life, right? For example, losing the Dark Magician of Destruction is kind of tough if you have only Asamina cards, which is why I'm trying to see if pure Yami is actually a good option. So I'll give you an update about it later. So that covers the Kilton Clip, the Kilton Arrest. Another thing that you need to care about is the Kilton B2B, but in order to get to the Kilton B2B, they need to play the game, which again makes very important for you to focus a lot on hand traps. And the only admission that you will allow is the Forbidden Droplet because of how good of a board breaker is against what your opponent's trying to left on the board. So I think that, as you can see, the Yami going second, or when it comes to their non-engine, especially now thanks to Dominus Spark, has a lot of different ways to deal with the Kiltons when you add also Typhoon in your extra deck. Another thing that I need you to remind you that I think is very important is the quality of the interruptions of the Yami going first. So let's say that just with Cookie, like, let's just imagine this, right? Let's forget that this is an Asamina deck, like, who cares? Let's say that you only left this, and an SP. All of these interruptions, I know that they may not seem like too much, but they actually are very tough against the Kilton monsters, because more than negations or negates, what Kilton cares is almost the same as the Yami card cares. Having a face-up monster on the board to make the plays. In this case, to generate the link 1 that will put yourself and your opponent in a tough scenario of how to interact. The same with the Kiltons, like if a Kilton is face up on the field, there's always the chance that they can go straight with the Synchro because of something that they have in the hand, right? However, let's see how Yami gets rid of a lot of those options. The SP gets rid of one monster. The Cookie gets rid of another monster. That's already 2 ways that you get rid of a monster of a deck that most likely don't have too many ways of putting monster on the board at the beginning of the duel. So you already pop 2. If you play the Akruki, you can pop a 3rd one, but even if you don't, you still have a very powerful interaction with the Kiltons, that is setting the monster. If you set the monster, they can acknowledge the effect of making the Synchro, and they can't even use it as Synchro anymore because they need to acknowledge a face-up monster, right? So you can see that also going first, the Yami has a lot of advantage, even with just one Snatchy and one Cookie in the graveyard. You can still have 3 different ways to let them have a face-up monster on the field, and most of the time, Kilton will only have 3 ways of putting a monster on the board. So, and this is without counting the Akruki, without counting the draws that can give you another hand trap, or the other cards that you have, because because of how this deck works, right? So as you can see, the Yami, even with Capsule 1, even with Marshmallow at 1, and even without all the Fiends mid-engine, has a lot of ways to deal with the Kilton deck in such a consistent way that you can actually beat them. Especially now that a lot of people, for some weird reason, are saying that Yami is the egg and whatever the fuck, right? Don't believe them, I like if you keep playing the deck, especially with this ban list, and especially if people are not kind of being prepared for Yami, you can actually beat them and you can actually win whatever tournament you're playing. So I just wanted to share you this first approach post ban list of how you can actually consistently duel against Kewl with Yami. And as you can see, this approach not only applies for the ban list, but it will be even better because I was thinking that I needed to play not only one Capsi, but one Marshmallow, and without Reproducus, and therefore all defense mid engine at all. So you can see how this is going to be a really interesting format. Don't sell your Yami cards, give them at least a try, because Dominus Spark gives a lot of advantage to the deck against the relevant meta decks that you are going to face, especially Kewl. If you enjoy it, leave a like, leave a subscribe, share it with your people so the channel can grow, and I'll see you in another video. Bye bye.